and welcome to episode 48.
Yeah, 48.
Yes, I got it right. First time round of Wrong End of the Stick podcast with me, Zach Eaton, and Jonathan Nimmo. Apologies about the birds in the background. It's a lovely sunny day in Milton Keynes today. So I've got the back door open, so you can probably hear a bit of wildlife and nature, reminiscent of the cricket greens in your local villages, or indeed wherever you are in the world. So welcome.
Yeah, we've got some more international listeners over the last couple of weeks or so. But just before we get into that, you do realize you're not getting a point for getting the episode number right. You know, I'm not allowing that.
I was really hoping so.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. You're not gaining on me for the sake of that. No, that's not happening. Dear. But yeah, no, welcome to all our new listeners. We definitely got some new listeners from around the world. We've had our first New Zealand listeners over the last couple of weeks. So welcome to those guys down under.
Welcome.
Yeah. We've got another special episode today.
We do. We've got another interview.
And this week we are, well, it's apart from Seamingly Stumped, which, you know, is a staple of our podcast, and we will, you know, continue on with our challenge. We're going to talk about scoring and why scoring is important in cricket and why it's complicated, or is it not complicated? Are we just, you know, scared of it, and why you shouldn't be scared of it, and all that kind of stuff. And then we've got an interview with an actual scorer. So he's a professional scorer he scores county cricket games in England. He's scored World Cup games. He's the head of the county Association of County Cricket Scorers. So what he doesn't know about scoring cricket games, you know, is not worth knowing. So that's going to be really interesting. So we'll come on to that in a little bit.
Lovely stuff.
So shall we kick off with Seamingly Stumped then?
I reckon so. Who went first last time?
I can't remember. I think you. No, I did. I think, but I'll let you go first this time. But just for anybody who is new to the podcast, Seamingly Stumped is our regular feature where we come up with slightly obscure, although sometimes not that obscure. We sometimes just don't know what they mean, cricketing terms, and we challenge each other to guess what those terms would be. And I think I'm winning about 3-2 over the last couple of weeks. Is that right? Maybe 4-3, something like that. I don't know. I'm definitely ahead. I know that much. That's all I really care about.
Well, that might all change today.
It might well do. Yeah, you are sounding worryingly confident on your term this week.
This is it. I'm sure we have both heard it, but I'm just not sure if you'll get what it means right.
Okay.
So let's
lead the way. I'm very confident that you're not going to get mine. I don't think I've been more confident than this that you're not going to get mine.
That's
and
horrible.
Then I've got a bonus one for you as well, which you should get. I hope, maybe not. I don't know, but we'll see.
God, anticipation is killing me. So your one, Jonathan, is chop on.
Chop on, right? I do think I know this. So a chop on is where there is a ball bowled and you are batting and you try and make a shot, but instead of the ball going presumably where you intended it to go, you sort of hits like the inside edge and then goes onto your stumps and you are dismissed.
That's pretty much perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect description of chop on. Bloody hell.
So chopping on is it's where you've it's usually like a cut shot that you've gone to make. You don't connect, you don't middle it, you slightly edge it. It comes off the inside of your bat onto your stumps, and you're out chopping on.
That is it. That is the chop on.
Yes.
Damn it.
So I'm at least I'm going to claim 5-3. I'm going to go with that for the moment. Can I extend my lead even more with this one? You ready for yours?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, yours this week, and I am so confident with this one. It's a carambol.
Is it a cannonball?
C-A-R-R-O-M. Carambol.
A carambol.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? It's not like a knuckleball, is it?
Tell me more. Because you're closer than I thought you might be. So tell me more about that.
Oh God. Okay. So, right. Okay. A carambol is a ball. I think it's usually like it's a bit of a deceptive piece of bowling where a fast bowler will bowl usually, and then they'll like put the ball where they kind of usually put your fingers on the crease for a fast bowler, or in like close to the crease, depending if you're swinging or whatever, or not on the crease, on the seams. You kind of fold your fingers in, the tops of your fingers in a little bit. And what that does is when you're delivering the ball, instead of all that kind of momentum going from there at the last minute, you just kind of extend your fingers out. And so instead of getting that whip that you would do, so that momentum of those fingers really trailing off the end and giving it that kind of extra kick, the momentum just kind of falls short because you're just kind of interrupting it with those extensions of the last end of your fingers. So it's like deceptive. It's like it's what a fast bowler usually does, and it kind of puts off a batsman and comes down a lot slower, but it looks like it would be a pace bowl.
That is an absolutely perfect description of a knuckleball.
Oh,
unfortunately, this is not quite the same thing. I'm going to give you half a point because
I'll take half
generous.
a point.
I'll give you half a point, but you can't get a whole point because it is a carom ball is a similar thing that is done by spin bowlers. So it's not a quick ball, and it's not quite. You don't quite hold it in the same way. But what you do is you bend your middle finger.
Right.
And so you hold the ball between your bent middle finger and your thumb, and you sort of flick the ball out rather than sort of normally if you're holding a spin, you'd have sort of your first and second fingers would be the thing that are basically holding the ball and generating that spin. So you bend your middle finger and you sort of flick the ball out. And it's kind of it was first developed in like the 1940s, and then it's been brought back recently by sort of some Sri Lankans and Ravi Ashwin and people in India have brought it back into fashion. But yeah, so you sort of snap your middle finger and thumb, and that is what generates the spin of the ball.
Wow,
so you were right in terms of it being your bent finger. But it's rather than bending all of your fingers and holding the ball there to sort of slow the ball down as quick bowlers do with a knuckleball, then the carom ball is sort of like flicked out to generate more spin that way.
So
you were close, but
just totally different deliveries and totally different.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been generous giving you half a point there. To be honest, haven't I?
You have been.
You weren't really right at all, but
you've already said it.
You got closer than I thought, so I'll still give you it because I think you weren't far away. I thought you were just not going to have a know about that at all. But it comes from there's a indoor game that's played with like little discs called carom, which I'm not sure where that comes from actually, but. And it's the same sort of action that you would do in that. I think it's an Indian game. Oh, yeah, there you go, an Indian game. So it's the same sort of action that they use there, and that's why it's called a carom ball.
There you go.
But there you go.
Have you got a bonus one for me?
I've got a bonus one for you. Right. So I've already given you sort of half a clue about this one because I've told you it's going to lead us into our special episode topic. So your bonus one for this week is a Duckworth-Lewis method, or as it is more modernly known, the Duckworth-Lewis-Stone, the DLS method. So what is Duckworth-Lewis? Because that's what most people will know it as. And I'm not looking for like the full in technicalities of that because that gets complex, but just the general principle of what is it.
Oh no.
Oh, maybe you don't know. Oh no. Don't tell me you're going to get close with carom ball and then not get what Duckworth-Lewis is.
You've talked about it before with me.
I'm pretty sure
I think
have,
on a couple occasions. Oh, bloody hell! Oh, God. Do you know what? I can't even claw it out of my.
Just what is it vaguely about? When does this come into conversation?
I don't know. I can't remember. I literally can't. I've like drawn a complete blank, and we've talked about it on more than one occasion as well.
We have. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It's this because cricket's been gone for too long, hasn't it? This is your problem.
No, I'm stumped. What is it?
You're stumped. Well, basically, the Duckworth-Lewis or Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method is a way for calculating what the score of a match would be. So if a match is interrupted by rain, or bad weather in general, it's the way of working out which team is ahead and therefore which team would win after a certain, as long as a certain amount of play has been played, they can calculate which team would be more likely to win and therefore which team would get the win. So, yeah. So it's basically a way of determining if a match is rained off, 5 overs before the end, it's determining which team would have been ahead in that time. So it's basically the calculation that you would use to figure out who's ahead at that point. Yeah. So yeah, it was so Duckworth and Lewis were two British statisticians, and then Stern is, I think, an Australian guy that has kind of taken it on and improved it and changed the way it's done slightly over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So yeah, so Duckworth Lewis is because obviously if one team's played an entire innings and then another one gets within like 5 overs and then the game gets rained off, they can't just write that off as as not having a result because they've played like 90% of the game. So what they do is have this calculation to figure out who's gonna win or who would likely win. And the way that that's done is it basically works, and it gets very complicated. There's a formula that starts to have things that I don't understand in, and it gets my A level in maths is no match for this kind of calculation. But effectively, it does on what resources you have left, and the resources that you can have is how many wickets you've got in hand and how much time is there to bat, and it does complex mathematical things and figures out, okay, well, if in this case X team is more likely to win than Y team because of this calculation. So that's the Duckworth-Lewis method.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I'm sure we've discussed that before as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have. I'm pretty sure we've talked about it when matches have been potentially rained off and things like that. So obviously this is only an issue in one-day games. So yeah, so that's where we are with that.
There you go.
I would also have accepted. There is a band called Duckworth Lewis, which is the guy from Divine Comedy, Neil Hannon. He's a massive cricket fan, and he's done a few albums with a new band called the Duckworth Lewis Method, which are all about cricket. So everyone should check those out as well. I would have accepted that as a band, but I would have accepted that as an answer. Sorry, but you didn't even get to that bit, so you definitely
see. That's what I was. That's
is that the thing that you remember?
It's got nothing to do with scoring. That's why I was so quiet. I was like, I didn't know it was a scoring thing. I'm sure it's something else. It was the band.
Yeah,
the band.
They're named after the scoring method. So.
Yeah, but the band's more entertaining for me.
Fair enough. I mean, they are a very good band. If anyone wants to go and check them out, Jiggery Pokery is just
definitely
an excellent, hilarious song that everyone should go and check out. Yeah, so there you go.
Well, I'm doubly stumped then today.
Yeah, you are. That's it's about 8-0 to me now. I'm yeah, my ability to keep score with our own competition probably means it's ironically poor given the what we're talking about today. So today we are talking all about scoring and why scoring is important and why it's quite so complicated as it is. Because in a sense, you don't have a score in a football match, do you? Because it's like just count the number of goals and that's it. In cricket, it gets a little bit more complicated than that, or does it? I don't know. How do you feel about scoring?
In cricket?
Yeah.
I think, like, if you look at some of the conventional sports growing up, especially in the UK, like you look at stuff like kind of football, for example, really simple. Put the ball through the net and you get a point. Score a goal, you get a point. Nice. You look at kind of rugby even isn't even, that much kind of complex. And I think where cricket isn't, for me anyway, in schools we weren't exposed to a lot of cricket. And there's 3 different, there's probably, 3 main ways in which you can kind of score runs, which, you can just get a run, and that's each time that you run between the wicket. But then as a kid, you're kind of like, is that 1 point when they do 1 dash, or is it 1 point when they do 2 dashes? And I remember as a kid being like, so they're not running now. Why aren't they running? It's like, because they've hit it far enough. It's like, well, they hit it far enough last time. but they only got 4 runs instead of 6. And so I think when you're growing up, you're not exposed to it a lot. But I think now that I've played it, scoring is a lot simpler. But there's still, I mean, you look at the kind of World Cup thing where stuff comes off of the bat and there's little points divvied up from here if it hits a helmet or does one thing or another. The scoring of it can, at times you can kind of be scratching your head when you're at the kind of village games. But for the most part now, I think it's okay. I think for anyone who's new to the game of cricket, it can seem overwhelming. But I think once you play it, apply some context to it, it all becomes relatively straightforward, I think.
Yeah, it does. And the thing is, I guess it's the same, and it's one of the reasons why cricket is so interesting, and it's because it does have a lot of layers. Because on a very simple sort of level, if you've got a one-day game, both teams go out there for a set amount of time, and whichever team gets the most runs wins. And it is that simple, sort of. But as you get sort of underneath that, as you say, there are strange little rules about what if it hits something in the game. Does it go over the boundary? Does it go over the boundary when somebody's touching it? How many runs does that get? There's a lot of complexities to it when you get further into it, and particularly when you look at extras. So if you bowl a ball that's too wide, that the other team gets a run, and all things like that kind of comes into it, which we're both very familiar with when we start bowling. And there's a no ball and what happens with that, and all kinds of things. So there is a lot of complexity that you can get into, but on a basic level, it really is, particularly for one-day games, it is just 2 teams and who's got most runs in that set amount of time.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the difference is it's not like a fluid back and forth. It is just one team, accumulating scores and then on the other side doing it. And
that's why you often get that for people, anybody who's a cricket fan that lives or has ever spoken to anybody who's not a cricket fan will usually get, if you're watching a game on TV, they'll be like, oh, who's winning? And the answer is always, well, you can't really tell yet, because that generally is. If it's in the first innings, you don't know. You can't see who's winning. You can tell if you're doing as well as you expected, but you can't see who's winning at any particular point. And again, that's one of the great things about cricket, is that it is a bit more complex and it's a bit more in depth, and it requires a little bit more time and energy to sort of understand all the ins and outs of it. So yeah, it's. But it can be quite simple. And if you are just first getting into cricket, I think you can just try to boil it down to its simplest level. That if you look at a cricket score, it will usually be, say 200, 4-3, and that means that team has lost 3 wickets and they've got 200 runs. Simple as. And when the next team comes out, they're going to have to beat that number of runs, as long as they don't lose all their wickets. So that's that. So it can be quite simple, but it's an interesting one in terms of. There are more complex things to it, which is obviously why you need professional scorers like we do at county cricket, which is going to bring us on to our interview very shortly. And they have, in the county cricket games, as I'm sure we'll get into talking about in a second, they have to have 2 scorers. That's in the laws of the game, that you have to have a home scorer and an away scorer, and they get together and they both count up and make sure everyone's doing everything right. And and you will see some score sheets that, again, they look, I think we mentioned last week, they look incredible and they look really complex, but actually it's coming down to counting who scored how many runs and how many wickets have you taken. So it is fairly simple at one level, but there's a lot of complexity around it, and learning how to do it well is a really interesting task, really.
I mean, what you often find, any of you that are kind of new to cricket or been playing, is that you won't have 2 scorers home and away in
not in village cricket. No.
And this is for a good reason, to reduce any kind of conflict at tea time. That's the last thing that you kind of want, especially after the opening batsman is 2 Thatchers in, halfway through his pork pie. You don't want him kind of squaring up to any of the scorers. So we keep it simple in the village cricket. There's only one scorer, a trusted scorer, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, and I mean to think because when we've played, because in our sort of six-a-side short form games where it's just like literally an hour long at lunchtime at work that we play, um, there is a simplified version of scoring that goes on there as well, and obviously we just whoever is around that can do it does it, and I've done that before, and I'll be honest, like trying to concentrate like that just for an hour and figure out who's what and who's gone where and which batsmen have swapped over and who gets that run and who gets the next one. It is complicated, and so could you imagine doing that on like a test match level and for over the course of a few days? That must be concentration levels just
it's daunting.
Must be crazy.
That invokes the same anxiety that I have around exams. The idea of doing it for a test match. Or even a whole day, actually, even like a whole day of cricket, being the scorer for a whole game's worth. I'd have a panic attack. It's just too much going on.
Yeah, but as we will hear shortly from Andrew when he gets talking about it, he's there are benefits to it as well, and it's a really rewarding thing to do as well, and I think once you get into it and once you kind of know the way it works, it's probably the same thing as once you start doing it, it's probably not that scary at all. It's probably quite easy and simple to do, and you can get quite into it, and at some point you can get paid to go and watch cricket. How much fun would that be?
That's it.
Yeah.
I think for me though, I'm just going to stick to the only scoring that I need to do is did I hit it or not, and am I out or not, and I just keep swinging.
Yeah, did it go for six?
Yeah, that's it.
You're like, no, you edged it and the keeper's got it. So
it was chopped on. I'm still standing there,
exactly.
like a lemon.
Oh dear, yeah. So I think at this point we will move swiftly on because we don't really know what we're talking about. We're going to move swiftly on to our interview with Andrew Hignall and let him tell everybody a lot more about county cricket scoring and scoring in general and just why cricket's amazing and let him do all of the stuff that we can't do.
Sounds good. I look forward to hearing it.
So I shall once again hand over to myself and this interview with Andrew Hignall, and we will be back in a little bit.
Awesome.
All right. See you in a second.
Bye.
Bye. Andrew Hignall, thank you very much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you. You are, you're a cricket historian, you're a cricket scorer, you are the chair of the County Scorers Association, and from everything we've heard, there's very few people who know as much about scoring and cricket as you in the country. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
No worries. So I guess, first question that I tend to ask people when they're on with us is what was it that first got you into cricket? What was it that sparked that initial interest in cricket?
Well, I suppose it was growing up in the 1960s, in the 1970s as well. And you couldn't but help get fixed by the cricket bug as a youngster. I was at school in Cardiff, and in my class were the sons of a couple of county players. And, of course, in the summer of 1968, there was that gripping England-Australia, the Ashes series. And I've got one of my earliest memories is the summer of 1968, the final test at the Oval with rain. And I've got vague memories of my parents prizing me away from the television, where I was hoping to watch some play. Going into Cardiff, we had to buy some new furniture and carpets, and I can remember, I was only aged 8 at the time, but I can remember actually standing and not really wanting to move in the television department because Derek Underwood was starting his wonderful spell. And I can remember eventually going home, sat on the bus, I wonder what happened, and being very, very delighted when knowing that England had actually overcome those problems. Then in the early 1970s, again the 1972 England-Australia series was quite gripping. By then, as a young teenager, my sort of social habits were starting to form, and with a group of mad keen schoolboys. I also was following the fortunes of the Welsh rugby team, and sort of just became a sports person. I've always been quite good with numbers, and I can remember it would have been again the summer of 1970. England played the rest of the world in a series. It was also a summer when there were the Olympic Games in Mexico. But in particular, there was one day in the summer of 1970 where, age 10, our sports lesson was cancelled. And we had as our sports teacher a gentleman who'd previously been a football referee. He was an enthusiastic cricket person, and I think he wanted to know what was going on in the world of cricket. So rather than us going outside to play cricket, he brought in a radio, turned on the commentary, gave us all bits of paper, and taught us how to score. And we then had a little maths lesson afterwards, and I was fascinated. The way in which we would use little symbols to designate things, and he was telling us, and he was showing us the umpire's signals as well, and it sort of added an extra dimension to my love of the game of cricket. So they always say you never forget a good teacher, and so I have to thank him for that lesson in 1970.
That's a fantastic story, and I wonder if he ever knew the sort of interest that really sparked, and how far you would go on and take that as well.
I don't know what happened to him. I know he was a very, very fine football referee and a good sporting teacher, and like all good teachers, teaching through enthusiasm and getting everyone hooked.
Yeah, what a fantastic way to do it. So yeah, I mean, my next question was sort of what is it about scoring in particular that really sort of not only, I guess, captured your interest as you know in school with that teacher, but what was it about the scoring aspect of it that sort of stuck with you and sort of led you through your career, I guess?
Well, I suppose it's given me an added dimension. The phrase 12th man and scorer, I think I was designated for that. I always seemed at school to be the person who was appointed 12th man and scorer, and having a good mind for numbers, a decent memory as well. That's where I went. But I think in particular the fact that cricket is a game of numbers, cricket is a game of records. And I was lucky enough in the early 1980s then. I just finished my first degree. I went to Exeter University, got a degree in geography. And I was lucky enough in the early 1980s then to be approached by the BBC in Cardiff. They were just starting up a sports department. In fact, whilst I came back and then carried on at Cardiff University. And I actually got a job working in the sports department at the BBC. And in the winter, it would have been writing down little notes, little scripts, as it were, for the person presenting the programme about football, about rugby, for horse racing, whatever was going on. And then in the summer, being actually given money, paid, to go along and watch county cricket and to score and to be the sort of the Welsh version of Bill Frindle, the bearded wonder. Although, as you can see, I'm not as hirsute.
Oh, fantastic! So, I mean, you've mentioned that sort of you've got a good head for numbers. I mean, that's. I think scoring has a bit of a myth around it, or maybe it's not a myth. Maybe that's sort of my question, is in terms of that it is extremely complex and difficult, and there's a lot of numbers floating around. Is that the case? Is it that you have to be really good with numbers, or is there other skills that are important when you are sort of embarking on that kind of a journey?
Well, I think as a county scorer, and now in my role as chair of the County Scorers Association, I think you have to stay calm, Obviously, it's not being a scorer. It's not just about counting up to 6 and making sure everything's right. You're part of a team. You've got your fellow scorer alongside you. You may have a score operator sat in with you as well. There's other people who sit in who will be gathering data for other purposes. There's a company called Opta who actually collect the data on behalf of the ECB, and it's sent then for betting purposes and other things. But you have to be a team player. You have to stay calm. Lots of things can be going on, but you've got to remain focused. And obviously concentration is really important. And my university training, as I said, as a geographer, a historical, and he said hysterical, but no, a historical geographer. And so I spent 4 years doing a PhD at Cardiff University, going through newspaper records, census records, all sorts of things like that. And so it's that painstaking attention to detail, concentration, and I suppose a single-mindedness as well, and not being distracted, but at the same time a sense of humour, good banter in the scorebox. And I have to say, having been involved last summer, I was one of the appointed scorers during the Cricket World Cup, and I was lucky enough to score the game at Old Trafford when New Zealand beat India. The game went into 2 days, and it's the other great thing which that game in particular was an example of, was just staying calm under pressure, knowing what might be happening. I can remember from my days on the BBC, the producers there would say prediction is always the best tool. It's no good afterwards coming out with a statistic. It's all about building up. So in other words, a batsman, let's say, is on 96 and he's 4 runs away from his first ever 100, and the commentator can make it into a really good story, rather than saying, oh, he's gone and scored 4, he's got to 100, and then about 5 minutes later, oh, that was his very first one. So in the case of the game as I say, Old Trafford, India against New Zealand last year, it was the way New Zealand were just ticking over in their innings, and I just had a feeling that what they got was actually going to be a winning score. And it was a sort of wicket where you could see the ball just occasionally jagging around. And it's all that experience and just not thinking, well, OK, India may have some of the best players in the world, therefore they're going to beat New Zealand. And you could just see the dynamics as well out there. New Zealand playing together as a team. And of course, we know from events at Lord's, let's not go into all the details about that fantastic finish. But you could just tell, just sitting there watching the dynamics, you could just see that there was a togetherness there about the New Zealand team. And although there were some wonderful, Virat Kohli, etc., some hugely, supremely talented players, I'm not in any way deriding them as players, but cricket is a team game. And you could just see on that occasion, and just being aware as well that there was going to be rain interruption for us as the scorers. We knew, therefore, if there's rain interruption, there's a potential for a boundary count back. So we went through at the end of the innings, did that. We have walkie-talkie contact with the third umpire. So at the end of the innings, the third umpire came through and said, guys, or words to the effect, guys, I don't want to be a pain, but you are aware of the regulations. I said, yes, we've done the boundary count back. Oh, brilliant, he said. And so we immediately knew, had the game been close, that the information could be passed over that the team batting second would have needed X number of boundaries to win. And that's exactly what happened again in that riveting final. So my colleagues there from the County Scorers Association were on the button, experienced people, knew what was needed, rather than it'd be awful if the game was held up for 5-10 minutes with people trying to work out what's going on. So I think it's experience, staying calm, and just knowing what might happen in the future.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic demonstration of quite how important the role is as well. As you said, there would have been nothing worse than, hanging around for 10, 15 minutes or whatever it would be to like work on a boundary countback because of the scorers. And I guess I guess it's a really important role that is best done if you're not really noticed. If there's no delay and the game runs smoothly, then I guess you've done everything as you would want it to be done in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same is often said about wicket keepers. If you don't notice a wicket keeper, they're having a good game. There are moments when sometimes I have been at county grounds. I won't say which ground, but it was in the southeast of England where there was an error on, it was an out ground and it wasn't a regular ground, but it was a game where, the umpires weren't sure that the scoreboard was right. There were communications with the scoreboard and there was constant then dialogue. The batsman out in the middle was saying, well, hang on, is that right? And these things do happen. And at the end of the day, there are three teams in every game. There's the home team, there's the away team, and there's the officials team. So in a county match, there'll be two umpires out in the middle. There's a match referee or cricket liaison officer, and there's us as the two county scorers, home scorer and away scorer. And we're in communication. We work together as a team, and we make sure that we get it right. And if, of course, the scoreboard has to be amended or play has to be stopped until the scoreboard is amended, well then so be it. But hopefully by us being proactive, by us watching what's going on, it's all about good communication. I think that goes back to my point earlier about the story of building up someone's maiden 100. It's all about good communication. I think those years I had working for the BBC and then, as I say, for so long working as a county scorer, that's what it's all about. And I know that we as a County Scorers Association, we now have we are part or we work very closely with the ECB and the Officials Association there. So there's a pathway for scorers to follow. There's a pathway for umpires. And in the same way that umpires will watch good practice, they'll come along and they'll watch videos of good practice. We encourage young scorers as well and emerging scorers, people who may have taken early retirement, perhaps, to come and sit in and actually just see the skills that are needed and to have a go also. It's a bit like riding a bike, or riding a horse. So years of practice and training, and you can then step into the shoes and become a county scorer.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So is there any one thing, I mean, one of the things actually, as you were talking about the sort of rain delayed game that sprang to mind, one thing that might be particularly sort of difficult about the scoring is in the same way that a batsman may struggle to sort of regain concentration after a rain delay or something like that. Does that have a similar impact? Do you sort of have to get your mind back into the game in terms of what was going on and where you're at or everything? Is that the hardest part, or are there other difficulties that people might face?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think everyone pays attention, and myself included as a geographer. We all pay attention to the weather forecast, and we're all creatures of habit. We all get into our routines. I get into my little match day bubble. And you'll go through, you'll know roughly what might be happening, although you've always got to expect sometimes the unexpected. There was a game last year at the Oval where a fox ran on for 10 minutes and cavorted around and left a calling card as well, so the man in the shop had to come out. I've been at a game at Oxford, which is basically the ground there where Oxford University play. It's a public park, and I remember a deer suddenly coming out and again cavorting around. We've had games where we've had fire alarms, we've had windows where the sun's been shining. So there's often the unexpected, but on a rainy day you tend to know what's going to happen. If it's going to be showers, it's going to be on, off, you know. Thankfully these days everything is computerized, although we still use pen and paper. We still keep tally, whether it's on sheets or in a nice leather-bound scorebook. But we all have laptops, we all have computers, and on there are various programs which have been developed. And in the course of the last 4 years, I've been part of a team working on a fantastic scoring package, which now is being used throughout the country at professional and recreational level. And embedded in that is the programme for Duckworth Lewis, or DLS. Mustn't forget Professor Stern in Australia, who's taken on board the calculations. So basically, if you know it's going to be a rainy day, and if you know there's going to be an interruption, again, through experience, you'll know that this is likely. You make sure, obviously, when you set the computer up, it takes me sometimes about half an hour or so to set everything up. You make sure everything's been logged in correctly, and you're just ready for whatever will be. Of course, if you get to a ground, it happened this year, or this year just gone, I should say, the summer of 2019, where there was a 4-day game, again in southeast England, where it turned up and just knew the weather forecast was bad. You could see the pools on the outfield, and each day there was rain interruption and very little play. And you just get into that sort of habit that, okay, it's chucking it down with rain, so maybe I won't immediately go into my game bubble. Yes, I'm there to do a job, but the chances of play, you'll get feedback from the umpires. The umpires will tell you off the record, obviously, things which won't necessarily be public information. So again, another good skill of a scorer is only speaking when you're supposed to. So you'll get information. The umps say very little chance, no play before lunch. Fine. You may then know the forecast is going to brighten up mid-afternoon. So you'll do your paperwork, catch up on what you have to do in the morning, maybe have a nice lunch, and then work your way through, and gradually, the umpires will let you know. The players will need sometimes 40 minutes or so to warm up, maybe longer sometimes. And we as county scorers are no different. As I said, we've got about half an hour to set the programs up, make sure we know all the information, and then off we go. And as soon as we've been told play's going to start, you get your game head on and off you go.
Fantastic. That sounds, I mean, as we said, it's an incredibly important job, and one that sounds like it takes an awful lot of skills and stuff for, of getting into. So is there anything, I know you mentioned sort of the pathways and stuff. Is there any advice that you would give to sort of a young budding scorer out there that wants to get into that aspect of the game?
Yeah, well, like in many things in life, you're never too young to start. But I think if you get the opportunity, I mean, these days, it's never been so good for young scorers coming in, or new scorers, I should say. With all the computer software, whether it be on tablets, whether it be on phones, there's a fantastic, absolutely superb set of software which has been developed primarily by the ECB in conjunction with various companies, and no longer do you have to sit there with, let's say, 12 multicolored pens or whatever. And the amount of stats that can be generated, I mean, players love to know their averages, their strike rates, and of course, in this day and age, with all the detailed analysis that goes on, have a go. You'll find that, a bit like me, as I said, growing up, if you're not quite good enough to make that starting 11, but you're good enough to be part of the team. And by being involved, it is very much a niche occupation. There are, in terms of across England and Wales, with 18 first-class counties, there's only in total about 50 people who are scoring professionally at first or second 11 level, at academy level. When I say professionally, that means obviously getting paid for what they do. But there's a great opportunity at club level. There's training courses, the ECB, the County Scorers Association. There's the ECBACO, the Association of Cricket Officials across the country. There's now a fantastic framework of training. You can actually attend courses. The county scorers officers will arrange this, and you'll soon know whether it's for you. As I say, there's been a plethora of people coming on board wanting to get involved, because it's a truism that scorers count. And we count up, but we count because we are part of the team. And as the laws of this wonderful game say, there have to be 2 scorers. And gone are the days of, as it were, notching away or chalking away. Now it's all computerized with this fantastic new software. At club level, your scores, your data can be seen throughout the club. In fact, you can put it up on big plasma screens in the clubhouse, and of course on websites. And that information now goes global. I know I scored several of the games in the Champions Trophy as well as the World Cup, and I've done semi-finals, some very close games as well, and also been involved in test matches. And it's a great thrill to be able to say that you're the person, part of the scoring team, who's been entering the data that's been going off and being seen worldwide.
Yeah, that's you've sold it to me, definitely. It sounds fantastic. And I just wonder whether you do get a sense when you are scoring, do you get a sense that you are more sort of involved in knowing the story of the game? Because every cricket game is a story. There's a narrative that goes on for every game, I think. Do you get a sense that you get more involved and are closer to that when you are scoring games, as opposed to when you're just in the stands and you've had a couple of beers and you might look up and have missed an over or two? I suppose there's no sense of that with scoring. Do you therefore feel closer to the action a little bit and to the story that's going on?
Yeah, it's great to actually be part of it. Like I said about the India-New Zealand last year, the World Cup semi-final at Old Trafford, and to be there an hour and a half after the game, packing my bags before heading home, and still to see all the Indian supporters thronging around, the autographs and all the rest of it, and then to look at the scorecard or the match programme, and to see that my name is there, and to have played a role. But it's not an ego trip. As I said, it is part of being a team and getting closely involved. Yeah, but having said that, probably the last thing I want to do then in the evening after play, or even the following day, is to talk through, ball by ball, I remember, that 3 went down to fine leg, and then there was a no ball. No, I'll want to switch off. I know there are a lot of players, if you talk to some of the top players in the world, they've got different mechanisms switching on and switching off. So they'll take guard, they'll watch the bowler running in, they'll be in their little bubble, they'll be focused, and then that ball happens. Then they might walk away from the stumps. They might go into their little routine of scratching at the ground. I know Mike Brearley used to be humming various pieces of classical music. Then you walk back over, take guard again, and in comes the bowler. Obviously, that's a quick bowler, not a spinner. But it's the same sort of thing as a county scorer. It's full on. Lots of concentration for 6 or 7 hours a day with breaks, sometimes even longer than that. And really, in order to be sharp and at your best, you don't want to be sort of going back to the hotel or maybe coming home and going through ball by ball. You want to have your light and you want to have your shade as well. And sometimes there are people who will say to me, Andrew, what was the score at the close of play? And sometimes, okay, you've got a good idea, but maybe because you're not back there in your bubble, back in your zone, you want to switch off. And maybe when you come home as well, yes, I quite like watching if it's a televised game, and again, like the World Cup, it was great to watch that and I could then remember things, but I'm not necessarily going to be going back and saying to friends and family, wow, there was a wonderful experience. There were 6 threes there in the space of 4 overs. I'll leave other people to take vicarious pleasure in that.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, it's for me, and I'm not a scorer at all. I'm obviously involved in cricket, but the closest I've come to scoring is doing hour-long games at lunchtime at work, and that I have trouble enough concentrating for that amount of time. But it definitely sounds like an extremely it's involved as in a game. I think there's more concentration potentially than any other role in cricket that's needed. But it sounds extremely rewarding as well. Is that fair?
Absolutely, and don't forget we've got we haven't mentioned T20 cricket. We've got the wonderful new brand of the 100 coming in. It's been deferred this year, be starting next year, bringing in a new audience, not just of cricket watchers but cricket followers. And as I said, I was brought into the game in the 1960s by watching Test cricket, and hopefully the new formats of the game will bring in a new audience and a new genre of scorers. And again, I think the idea that you can sit in the crowd with your mobile phone and other devices, and you can tap into the data, and it's such an information-rich environment now. No longer are you scratching your head wondering, I wonder how many 4s that person's hit, I wonder how many balls that person's faced. It's all there, and the information that you can see at county grounds, the replay screens, it is absolutely fantastic. And I think, as you say, it's hugely rewarding, and to know that as I say, I've played my small little role in making sure everything runs smoothly, and you certainly do have a lot of pride at the end of a game, irrespective of whether your team's won. By having a successful game again at the end of each day, what I tend to do, whether it's home or away, you will go and see the umpires, you'll go and see the match referee. As I said, they're your teammates. And they'll be usually, as I say, they'll say nice things. Well done. That was another good day. And it's a bit like, I suppose, being at school. The praise, you thrive, youngsters thrive on praise, youngsters thrive on positive language, and to get that feedback, to know that you've done well, and the next day, let's say it's an away game and I'm waking up in a hotel, and you pick up the newspaper and you look in it and you see the scores, and you know everything, everything's in there correctly, and it's all part of this fantastic tapestry of summer life, and something that I'm sure I speak on behalf of so many other county scorers. We're all missing it, but obviously we understand the reasons why we can't do our work at the moment, and health and safety is of paramount importance. But we're all itching to get back and to get back into something that we enjoy and something that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much true for a lot of people, fans or involved in working in cricket. Can I just pick up one quickly? I am going to let you go at some point shortly, but I'm loving this conversation, so I'm going to keep you a few more minutes if I can. You mentioned just the 100 there. In terms of looking at it from sort of a scoring angle, is that something that you're looking forward to? Is that what kind of challenges would that pose to somebody? I'm not sure whether you're going to be involved in scoring for that, but what kind of challenges would that pose, that kind of new format?
I don't actually use the word challenge. I use the word opportunity. As I said, it's a fantastic opportunity to bring on board a new audience. But I mentioned a few minutes ago that the last 4 years I've been part of a development team developing the new scoring software, PCS Pro, which the ECB has introduced. And I've also, in the last 18 months, I've been part of the team developing the program for the 100. In essence, the 100 is only, let's say, 20 balls less than a T20 game. It's about two teams with a bat and ball. The rules are exactly the same. Okay, there may be some minor changes, like bowlers can bowl, if they wish, they bowl blocks of 5 balls and then bowl another 5. But the software manages for that, and we've been working our way through. We've now got a test version, which is or a trial version, I should say, which has come out, and I know my county colleagues have been looking at that, and we were all really looking forward to using it this summer. Yes, to answer your other question, yes, I will be involved, and I'll be very proud to be involved. The key thing is that my role as chair of the County Scorers Association is that we as a group, we help to appoint scorers for major games. A few years ago, we appointed scorers, or we provided additional scorers, I should say, for the Women's World Cup. We provide every year for the high-profile games at Lord's. It's a way of us recognising achievement, scorers who might be coming to retirement, or emerging scorers, possibly scorers from a minor county who've put in lots of years of service. It's a means of us saying thank you. But last year, with the Cricket World Cup, one of my roles together with colleagues was we helped. This was a request that had come to us from the ICC to the ECB. And so working in conjunction with the ECB umpires manager, a man called Chris Kelly, we helped to draw up a rota of scorers for the Cricket World Cup, and we were poised to do the same for the 100. And there are a lot of very enthusiastic scorers out there in both county as well as recreational and age group cricket, all looking forward to these fantastic new opportunities which are going to come their way. And as I said, the future is a really bright and encouraging one because of this fantastic new software which has been created.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I mean, you've touched on some really fantastic moments that you've had in sort of scoring so far. Is there any one match in particular that stands out for you in your memory? And is there any one that you will look back on forevermore as a particular highlight of your scoring?
Yeah, obviously scoring games at Lord's, a great moment. I was there in 2013, Glamorgan playing Nottinghamshire. There've been some great moments in some of the other international games, and I'd have to say that the 2015 Ashes, when England beat Australia, but that was great. But to actually in 2009 be one of the scorers at Cardiff, the first time that there'd been an Ashes test between England and Australia that wasn't held in England or Australia. It was held on Welsh soil. There've been some great games elsewhere around the country where I've been lucky enough to sit in the scorer's chair. And it would be very wrong of me just to pick one out, but I'm just thinking back to last summer, and I'd have to say that again, the India-New Zealand World Cup semi-final at Old Trafford has to be up there as one of the finest games. And as I said earlier, and I've explained the reasons why, and just to be part of that And as I say, everything went off smoothly. And at the end of the game, for the third umpire, the match referee, to come into the score box at Old Trafford and just to say, well done, guys, that was a great, well done. And as I said, that's something. It's there in my diary, and I know that flicking through Wisdom this year, reading that, and like the Welsh comedian Max Boyce, his catchline, "I was there." Well, in that case, yes, I was there.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. That's been amazing. I could listen to your stories for a long time, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today and to give us as a sort of insight into this world of scoring, which is, I think, often missed out a little bit in terms of the cricketing story and not well known.
I'd finish by just, encouraging anyone who's got an interest just to go onto the ECB website, type in scoring opportunities, and you can see the fantastic training that's available using this software. And who knows, in 15 or 20 years' time, they could be sat here doing this job.
Fantastic, thank you for that, and we will include some links to those in the notes. So if anybody's listening, they can go on and click on those and find out more.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. And welcome back. Thank you very much for sticking with us through that. It was a little longer than we potentially expected, but there was a lot of really interesting stuff that Andrew had to say there. So thank you for listening to all of that. That was really interesting, wasn't it? Hearing all about his life from as a schoolboy right through to scoring. Sorry, for the World Cup. Can you imagine scoring a match in the World Cup semi-final? That must have been a fantastic experience.
It's amazing, isn't it? And such a kind of passionate guy about his craft as well. It's always lovely to hear that when you see someone who takes pride in what they do and, continuing to do so. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So fantastic interview there. And I don't think we've probably got a huge amount else that we can say on scoring or anything else, to be honest. He's kind of covered it all, hasn't he? In far more articulate terms than we ever could. So, it's almost like he should be doing a podcast instead of us, but hey, there you go.
You're stuck with it. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not going anywhere. So, there you go. Well, I don't think we've taken a week off our game review one this week because we didn't download anything for this week. So we will be back with that next time out. I'm not sure if we will record next week or not. Next week's probably going to be a bit of a busy week for us both, isn't it? So we might be 2 weeks until we're back again. But we'll have another two can play that game and more Seamingly Stumped and potentially more interviews because people seem to like listening to other people talk about cricket more than us. So we'll maybe be back with more of that.
Are we going to restart the playing field with this Seamingly Stumped? Because I feel like
why? Because you're losing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think we've just learned all about how you can keep score of things and then do it very well. So I'm not sure that we should. I think I'll, I don't know. We can restart if you want, but I'm pretty confident going forward.
No, I'm joking. We'll keep going. I can bring this back.
Oh, you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I think of some doozies to come up with.
You're just going to start making stuff up, aren't you? That's what you're going to do.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, we'll probably start a whole new breed of words coming into cricket, and people are like, where did that come from? And years to come, and it's like, yeah, I'll track it back to our podcast.
That's it. It's these two idiots from Milton Keynes, not making up stuff about cricket.
Oh dear. Right, well thank you. If you have enjoyed that or if you've got any further questions for us, then do get in touch with us. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Wrong End Podcast, or you can email us at wrongendofthestick@hotmail.com. Get in touch, reach out. If there's anybody else that you'd be interested in listening to interviews about, let us know. We'll see what we can set up.
Lovely stuff.
Good stuff. Right, other than that, we will let everyone get on with their days. We're taking up more than enough of their time right now.
And we'll see you all next time.
We'll see you all very soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.